Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the next FP&A Trends Webinar. My name is Larissa Malnichuk. I'm a CEO and Managing Director at FP&A Trends Group, an international FP&A board. And today I'm going to facilitate this FP&A Trends Webinar on the subject of what does it involve to move to the digital and data-driven FP&A. Just to give you, to let you know that we have over 500 registrations today from 68 countries. So it's really international webinar. And of course, the main mission is to share with you the latest trends and developments. We already discussed similar subjects at many different webinars, and we looked at different case studies. The agenda for today: digital FP&A, a quick definition, but also what are the practical insights from leading organizations, from NetApp and also from Ecolab. And then we will also look how a modern FP&A solution can help to move to digital and data-driven FP&A. Of course, conclusions and recommendations and Q&A session at the end. And now I would like to start to introduce our international panel to everyone. So I would like to ask Thomas, Alex, and Oliver to switch on your cameras and we will start. Hello, everyone. Again, we have a very international European panel today. So let us start from quick introductions. We are starting from Thomas Landel, who is Senior Director EMEA GTM Finance at NetApp. Thomas is a member of our Amsterdam FP&A board, where he presented to Amsterdam member, but also Thomas presented at our Brussels FP&A board. And it was a very interesting presentation about maturity model that Thomas developed and used in his company. He's established a business and finance leader with deep expertise in business, finance, FP&A, and sales operations. And previously, before NetApp, he also worked in Unilever and at Electrolux. More than 15 years of experience with NetApp in fast-paced Silicon Valley growth environment. Thomas, we are so happy to have you here today. Welcome to FP&A Trends Webinar.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thank you, Larissa. Thank you,
Thomas. The next speaker, joining us from Zurich, from Switzerland, Alex van der Kutch, who is Finance Director, Business Intelligence and Digital Transformation at Ecolab, and he's a member of our Zurich FP&A board as well. Broad experience in finance and decision support in consumer goods and business-to-business industries. But at the moment, Alex is leading a newly established business intelligence and digital transformation team for Ecolab Europe. And today, Alex is going to share his case study on how to transform FP&A to digital and data-driven. Alex, you're welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks.
The next panelist is Oliver Sullivan, who is Head of FP&A Solution Consulting at Unit4. Oliver is based in the UK and he has over 20 years of cross-vertical experience in FP&A transformation and expert knowledge on a range of EPM and BI platforms as well. He has a deep understanding of how FP&A could be transformed and what is the role of technology in this transformation. And today, Oliver is going to talk about this, to share experience, how we can transform FP&A. Oliver, you're welcome.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for the introduction, Larissa.
Thank you so much, everyone. Just for a few slides, the common slides, you can switch off your camera before we start your presentations. Let me do a very quick introduction on my background and FP&A Trends group as well. I'm British qualified accountant. I'm joining today from just outside of London. I worked always in FP&A and I was leading global and European teams in a number of organizations before I started my own company. International FP&A board, before COVID, we established 27 chapters in 16 countries on 4 continents. Those are the cities for you. And we hope to start traveling again with face-to-face meetings, even at the end of this year. And also recently, we started best practice workshops and FP&A consultancy services as well. Today's webinar, it will be 1 hour. Your participation is welcome. There will be 2 polling questions, also interactive Q&A session at the end. But please, I would like to remind you that you can easily use your chat box to send questions as soon as you have them. Presentation is available in handouts, but also you will receive the recording of this webinar and presentation in PDF format after this meeting. And of course, after the meeting, we will have a very quick survey and welcome your feedback. Thank you so much to our sponsor for today, Unit 4, a global leader in enterprise cloud software for people-centric organization and the organization that has flexible and dynamic FP&A system. Let me start with a few definitions, and also only today we have finalized our FP&A Trends survey. So some insights for you very briefly. Digital FP&A, we had many different definitions. I like this one. So digital FP&A generates real-time analytical insights by using both internal and external data with minimum of manual effort. So this is a definition which connects together digital and data, and of course it brings speed, flexibility, and exceptional level of granularity. And the technologies that normally are used for FP&A, for this digital transformation, cloud FP&A solutions, flexible and dynamic, predictive analytics, machine learning solutions, and of course, automation processes as well. But not only these, it's so important to remember about process and organizational structure that also should be reformed and reorganized. And just a few insights for you in terms of this is our survey and what is happening around the globe. We checked the whole globe. We received more than 340 insights from different people and different organizations. So what is happening right now? 40% of organizations report the data they use is low or very poor quality. 48% of companies still adopt this very traditional method of planning, last year plus percentage or minus percentage. 31% of companies still continue to use spreadsheets 100% of their time, and another 43%, they continue to use spreadsheets 75% of their time. And 12% of organizations use cloud solutions, only 12. And 11% of organizations started to use AI/ML, with 57% planning to use this in the next few years. Not actually only bad news in terms of FP&A and how data and technology is used. We noticed that for insight generations, this year, there was an increase of 7% for FP&A to generate insights. It used to be 25% the previous years. At the moment, it's 32% of time now spent by FP&A to generate insights and to support decision making, which is some progress. Now let us start to look at the case studies. So Thomas Landel, Senior Director at NetApp. Thomas, please, can you switch on your camera? And we would like to hear your insights about digital transformation in your company. You're welcome,
Yes,
Tom.
Sure. Thank you, Larissa. Yes. So I want to share with you some practical insights from NetApp over the next 8 to 10 minutes or so, right? And when starting our digital transformation journey, I would say, or at least the one in EMEA, we first, it's such a large scope, the definition of digital transformation. So I first want to share with you on the next slide a little bit of a definition so that we can get on the same baseline as what we mean when we talk about digital transformation, because many people may have different views and opinions, if you will, what the digital transformation is. Is it, moving from your Kodak camera to your digital camera, or sort of what is it really about, right? So for me, I kind of like the Wikipedia definition that talks about the digital transformation being the adoption of digital technology and replacing non-digital or manual processes. So to make that a little bit more tangible, right? Like you kind of look at that like in a car factory or whatever, where you have the workers putting the car together, and you kind of replace that with the digital process, which in that case would be a robot. And what we see also recently in the development is that we see this RPA, or robotic process automation, being rolled out throughout the finance organization. So you kind of have something that's programmed to replace your keyboard entries or your mouse movement or right clicking or the other manual work that your financial analysts are doing, right? And the other thing I wanted to say when we talk about introduction to digital transformation is that, of course, digital transformation isn't something new. It's something that's been going on in FP&A for a long time, right? If you're as tenured as I am, you remember back in the day when you used to sort of make these Excel macros or whatever that you program. That is kind of a form of automating manual input, right? You record your macro, so you got somebody in your team that's good in Visual Basic or something, and instead of actually copy paste or drag and drop, you would run the macro and it will do all of that for you. And that is a way of automation. But of course, with the new technologies that we have with ETLs and with RPA and whatnot, and other planning systems, online collaborative tools, it's come much further. And when I apply this, I also think it's good to have a kind of a structured approach. So what we can see on the next slide is a study from McKinsey, and they looked at the overall finance department. I think it shows the opportunity for automation, and it shows a good approach to approach it in a systematic way. And basically, they looked at the overall finance department and said, okay, what can we automate? And I think at many companies, including NetApp, we start at the quick wins, which tend to be the more transactional activities, right? So if you there are more processes in McKinsey study. I just picked a few ones here. You see at the top, the accounting operations being more transactional, and at the bottom, the external relations being more strategic. So accounting operations was really an area where finance focused on automating first, and so did we at NetApp. Investor relations is a little bit more difficult to automate, I think. I guess you can have Siri or Alexa running your earnings calls, but I don't think that we're very successful. But FP&A is somewhere in between, and FP&A is a little bit more strategic than accounting operations and other functions within the finance remit. And FP&A has therefore a little bit less potential for automatability, as McKinsey calls it. 11% they expect to be fully automated, but you still have 45% that can be highly automated, another 34% that can be somewhat automated. So that means that there's still a tremendous opportunity within FP&A to drive digital transformation and automation. And let me talk about how I approached that at NetApp on the next slide, at the NetApp EMEA business, not the corporate view, let's say. And by the way, this is my own presentation and my own opinions and my own story, not the ones officially of NetApp. Just to want to make sure that you're aware of that as well. So what I did is basically first you set up your digital transformation objectives, and that can be many different things. For me, it was really two things that stood out. So we took the EMEA finance leadership team, and we said, okay, these are the things that we agreed with as a leadership team that we want to drive with this automation. One of the things was really the speed, and that's one of the key benefits also of automation, I think, is that compared to manual processes where you copy paste, you drag and drop, you upload and you download and you transform and whatnot, right? To automate it, we had the opportunity to increase the speed of the output materially. And then the other thing was really to automate, right? And that sounds like a given, but why I want to highlight that is really about automating so that your highly skilled FP&A staff really can focus on the value-add activities, right? And not focus on the transactional repetitive tasks that can be dealt with by digital processes, and the more value-add, the analytical capabilities done by your financial analysts. Secondly, we wanted to establish digital transformation culture, and that's when we got involved with the team. So the leadership team actually kind of set the agenda first, then we get involved with the team and we drive through all the training and the change management and making sure that they are bought into this, right? Not only within our team, but you have stakeholders all over your company that you need to make sure are bought into this process, and particularly the ones that have to execute on it, right? And then what we did was we more or less did the McKinsey thing. We wanted to structure a little bit our output or our processes, whatever you want to call it, and then we selected the ones that had the most impact, where we thought we were the most potential to automate, and where we had the most gain in terms of speed and more gain in terms of resource savings by automating things, right? If you look at the bottom, some of the things that are represented here by the laptop with all the inputs, like 3-year plan and whatnot, we decided not to go into that, because in tech also, things are so dynamic. There's so much different data that you need to put into your 3-year plan, and you probably present it in Excel, in PowerPoint anyway at one point. So not a lot to be gained there compared to some of the other things on the top there, which are represented by the little robot. So we had 2 processes really around the deal economics. We do a lot of deals, and we want to know what the discount and margin and revenue and whatever all these inputs get into that. So we focused on really replacing the manual processes in that regard with RPA. Same thing on the headcount forecast. Also something that is a main cost driver for us, obviously, is our headcount, and to make sure that we also a repetitive process with recruitment, with attrition rates, with lead times and whatnot on recruitment side. So we actually also programmed that and made an RPA of automating the headcount forecast submission, would then drive the headcount expansion and whatnot, right? So those are the 2 ones that we addressed. We're a long way to go still to look at the other opportunities that we have in our output processes to see where we can take RPA in particular further. And so I think that my final message is that, you know, digital transformation is really about automating manual work. If you want to be harsh, you could say it's just like a factory, but the key is really that you want to be able to have your FP&A staff being able to focus on the value add activities, right? And I think most companies, like I said, started with the finance accounting operations, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to do this also in FP&A. So my recommendation is, you know, start your own journey if you haven't started already, and make it tangible, right? And structure the approach the way step by step that you approach it, and then you can take this sort of really broad digital transformation buzzword, if you will, into something that's tangible and that you can execute on in your own finance teams or FP&A teams. So
thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you. Great insights. Especially amazing to see that over 56% of current FP&A processes could be fully or highly automated. So very interesting insights, and it would be definitely reverse trend for the current only 30% of high value adding activities. I would like to invite our panelists to switch on the cameras and quick commentaries from you. Alex, Oliver. Alex, let's start from you. Any questions, any commentaries after this presentation?
Yeah, Thomas, first of all, thank you for the presentation. I'm curious, how did you approach this change? Because did you sort of top-down identify where you want to do this and, let's say, fly in the consultants and build a solution for your teams? Or did you more take the approach where you teach your people to use technologies and build these automation and smart solutions themselves?
A little bit of both. I think first we set the sort of the objectives as the leadership team, right? And then we created the buy-in and we did a lot of training with our teams. But you need the expertise as well, right, from consultants and to bring them on board. Particularly when you talk about RPA or, you know, ETL processes like represented on this slide by the database graph, right? You need that because you may not necessarily have that type of skill set in your team today.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Thomas. Oliver, any commentaries?
Yeah, I suppose there are 2 things that struck me about that. Firstly, thank you, Thomas, for the insightful presentation. I suppose the 2 main things were the what was it, if I remember off the top of my head, between 50 odd, 56, something like that, through to 89, 90% of processes relating to FP&A can be automated, at least, you know, not too difficult, without too much difficulty. And that just spells opportunity as far as being able to make better decisions based on reliable data. I found that a very interesting set of statistics. And the other thing that struck me is the fact that, you know, this slide here, it's a journey. You start somewhere. You don't have to take this big bang approach of let's do everything, let's automate everything, turn it into a factory. It's about that low hanging fruit and starting on that journey. So very insightful presentation. Thank you for that, Thomas.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you so much for your commentaries. Once again, Thomas, thank you for your insightful presentation. Now this is the time to hear from our participants. We really would like to understand what is the biggest barrier for you at the moment for your digital transformation. I'm launching the polling question, and as soon as you see this poll, if you can start to vote. It's very easy to do with this technology. So please choose one of the following. What is the biggest obstacle for digital FP&A transformation in your company? Select one of those: people, processes, technology, or business culture. Please continue to vote. More than 45% of you voted. Just a few seconds. Please choose one of those. What is the biggest obstacle? People, process, technology, or business culture? More than 60% of you voted. Just a few seconds. I'm closing, and I'm sharing the results with everyone. Some interesting results. Quite even, I would say, but actually business culture is the biggest one, 30%, the biggest obstacle. Then following with people, 25, technology is the next one, 27, and then people. And the process is only 18%. Thomas, what would be your quick commentary?
Yeah, it's interesting that it's so evenly spread, right? That surprises me. There's not really a preference, and I'm also a little bit surprised that business culture comes as the first, and that's a bit, to me, a little bit worrying, right? I would like to see there's no obstacle in terms of business cultures, because I expect that businesses want to embrace new technologies and new processes. So that's not good. Sometimes I experience that people can be the biggest obstacle, actually, that you don't have the right people on board that are buying into the journey, if you will.
Thank you for this commentary. Alex, your commentaries, please.
Yeah, if you look at it, if you add business culture and people, that's 55%, right? And that is, let's say, the soft side of this transformation. And it shows that change involves people, and people are typically resistant or maybe a bit hesitant to change. So I think it really makes the case for transformation is more than just technology. It's the full thing. It's the full organization.
It's a great observation. Thank you for this. Absolutely, more than 55% is due to soft factors, not the hard ones, such as process and technology. A great reminder for all of us. Thank you for your votes. I'm hiding the results. And let us look at the case study. Alex, you're welcome to share with us Ecolab Digital Transformation case study journey. So share with us what are the key success factors. And it's all coming from your newly formed department. Really looking forward to this. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to share with you the experience that I had over the last 3 years. So as just mentioned, I built a new team from scratch. And on the following slide, you can see actually where we came from. And I think the picture that you see on the left is quite recognizable for many of us, right? So it was very inefficient ways of working. You could say typically Excel-based. People were spending all of their time on trying to get to the data instead of doing something with the data, right? So we were clearly missing the opportunity to drive value. And then what we also saw in areas where things were going right or better, it was very much driven by an individual that had specific knowledge. It was not ingrained in the organization. And if something good happened in one area, it was hardly ever leveraged to another area, right? So what we said, we need to change this. And one of the big problems that we had is everybody had their day job and everybody was busy, right? And we realized if we really want to make this change, we need to get to a dedicated team, dedicated resources. And that's why we grounded my team 3 years ago. We started totally from scratch, a new team in Europe, nothing like my team before. And we said, if we want to drive this, we need to create what I would call a holistic team. So this is not just about a programmer or having finance knowledge. It's also about project management, change management, external perspective, what's going out there, what are best practices, and so on. And we decided this has to be a business team. So this is not IT driven, and we kept away from external consultants as well. So we really said, no, these are our core processes. We want to understand them and own them. And this is not an IT organization, but we are really part of the European finance team that in our organization is the key team that deals with data, analytics, things like that. So then if we move on, what you can see is, so one thing is we want to make an impact, right? So what we very much learned is digital transformation is not about technology push. When we started our journey, we were very much afraid that we're going to end up with something what you see on the left. A Ferrari stuck in the garage, nobody is using it. So we want to make an impact, right? So we believe this is not about digital for the sake of digital, because it will be a waste of time, money, efforts, and so on. So it's all about what does the user need, right? So it's not about the smartest design. If users don't use it or go another way, it doesn't really work, right? So in our strategy, that is clearly reflected. So on the next slide, we actually have our strategy. And as you can see, it's the bubble in the middle that counts. It's customer centricity. In our case, our customers are 90% of the time are actually our own colleagues, right? It can be a division, it can be your GM, it can be finance colleagues, other FP&A colleagues, it can be anyone. But the key thing is that we said the user is what it's all about. And it means that we are solutions focused. So we're not here to push a technology like we just said, but we're here actually to provide a solution, something that helps the organization. So we're here to answer business needs. And the green bubbles that you see on the left are the ones that we learned. And also, if you read about it in some great articles that you can find, is what is key to have an impactful solution. So first of all, answer a business need. People are much more willing to use your tool and collaborate in the building when you are there to help them, compared to, oh, here's this great piece of software, and now go ahead, right? And another thing is it needs to be relevant. So the data that you're using, what you're presenting, it needs to be relevant, right? If it's not what the business is used to, how they look at the business, it's not going to help. And it also has to be actionable. It's one thing to have the right data, but if it ends up with millions of rows of data, huge spreadsheets, the business typically doesn't know what to do with it, right? So it needs to be actionable. Whenever you look at your solutions, it needs to be clear. What's the message? What can I do with this? It needs to drive an action. So if you want to do that, right? So how do you get there? The key thing is get out of the ivory tower. Now, don't do this alone in a corner with a bunch of smart people, but do this together with the business, with the users. Do this with the people that do the hard work today, that know what's right, that know how the decisions are being made, right? So do this together. And how do you do this? So we decided to do this through agile development. So we agree on the objective. What is the business question that we want to answer? And then we go into iterations or cycles where we create a prototype. Then we look at it together. We get feedback. We fix some bugs, and we go on and on and on. And each step, it becomes a bit better. And another important element is what we call adaptive design. It's okay to change your mind if it means that the end result is better, because that will mean you will make more impact, right? So it can be the moment they see a prototype and they said, oh, first I said this, but honestly, now I look at it, I got some new feedback and we need to change the design a bit. That's fine, as long as the end result is better. And then you've done all this, right? So you've created your great solution. It's also about managing the change, because it's one thing to create something that is great, but it's about adoption, right? People are hesitant to change. Change can be scary. People are busy. It can be anything. So you need to very proactively drive this change. Help the business to do this. Dedicate resources to drive this. Trainers, you name it. And if you've done all this and you've driven the adoption, be careful. Something that is good for this year could be not perfect anymore next year or the year after. So think about solutions lifecycle. It's like an app on your phone, you know. You get updates every now and then that make things a bit better, new technology, new functionality. So think about your solutions lifecycle. And then something that we learned the hard way, and that's the thing totally on the right, master data. You can do all of this, what I just described perfectly, but if your master data isn't correct, people are looking at the wrong data and they will find out pretty soon, and they don't want to use your solutions any longer, and it will not have the impact that you're after, right? So if we can move on, then, because this is not just about the solutions, right, and about what you do, it's also about how it fits in the organization. So on the next slide, you can see how we approach this. So this is a slide that comes from IMD, which is a business school that I very much like. But there were 3 phases basically about what we do here. So the first thing is you create this. There is this need, right? So you could say, what's the business need? What's the customer need? And what sort of technologies are available? Well, the combination of those gets you to a new solution, the star. Hooray! We got our great new tool, analytics, whatever it is. Then you see you've driven with this together with IT and other automation solutions, you've become more efficient, right? People that used to create this manually or semi-manually, now it's being automated. Your processes change. So the combination of your new solution with IT capabilities means that your processes will change. This is the first sort of, this means something else needs to change, right? So your processes change. Then you see when your processes change, it can be that your organizational setup will need to change. So what we saw, we needed to create a team like my own. We also saw that we had quite a lot of people doing transactional finance in our FP&A and also in controlling teams. And we said, okay, we don't need these data crunchers anymore. We actually now need people that can interpret these new tools, that can work with it, but that can also be stronger business partners that provide insights. So that means that the organizational structure changed. And on top of that, we even saw that the culture had to change, because is the business ready for it? Self-service instead of somebody giving you a PowerPoint. All sorts of things can change, right? So this is like a piano. You need to think about all the elements in your organization if you want to make an impact. It's more than technology. So how did we do this, right? So on the next slide, you will see a part of how we did this. So my new team, so that's the team that was at the core of the change that we did in Europe. The 2 blue bubbles actually are my team. You'll have very techie people, data engineers or digital analysts that create more like the front end of the tools. And we have people that I call analytics business partners, very close to a finance business partner, but people that typically come from finance. They know the business, they're great business partners, but they are also tech savvy. And they actually work as a catalyst, as a translator between the business and the techie people. And together with the techie people, so the dark blue bubble, these analytics business partners, and doing this together with the business, we create our solutions. The moment that they're there, they're automated, right? So that is presented by this cloud with these turning gears that you see on the top right. And it's no longer about creating these reports. It's about process control, quality. Can we make it faster? Can we make it smarter? And then the delivery of our reports and analytical tools is one-way, zero-touch direction to the end users. So 80-90% of periodical reporting is zero-touch, and it goes to the business. However, of course, the business needs support, right? You need interpretation of these numbers. There can be specific business cases, ad hoc cases, you name it. And that's where we still see that the analytics business partner plays an important role with our GMs and other senior leaders. When we make a big sales deal, you name it, right? They understand both worlds. So what does it mean, right? What is the impact for us? So no more periodical Excel reporting. We have now harmonized user-focused reporting and a great analytics portfolio, so you can also go fully ad hoc, flexible, depending on what you're after, right? So we have better insights, deeper insights, a lot faster, great granularities, things that Excel couldn't handle in the past, through cloud computing, all available now. We are as automated as can be, and we call this zero operations. And because of that, we were able to change our organization and our processes. So we are much more efficient, and we were able to change the way we work and the way we're set up, so we can truly focus our resources now on business partnering. And actually, something I'm quite proud of, so together with the business teams that we were doing this with, we actually received a CFO Finance Excellence Award last year for our digital finance transformation. And this is the use case that I wanted to share with you.
Alex, what a great journey. Congratulations on your progress. Definitely a very interesting case study. Thank you so much for sharing. I would like to ask our panelists to switch on the cameras and to comment very quickly. But before we do this, we already have a lot of questions and some commentaries as well. Just a quick reminder, please continue to send your questions. Even if we don't have time to answer all of them, we will do after the meeting. And the first comment, actually, it was about business culture and people. And one of the participants thinks that it's actually the same thing, business culture and people, and they're closely aligned. I think just to give this detail that what we mean by people, it's people skills, obviously, but of course, people are very connected to culture. But definitely over 55%, it all depends on this. Thomas, what would be your commentary on this great presentation?
Yeah, I think it was very interesting to follow through the journey. And I think the setup in the beginning there, Alex, when you decided to really set up a separate team, but also not really engaging consultants so much, if I understand it correctly. What was your thought behind that, that you could have all the skills inside and a separate team, let's say?
Yeah, so like I said, we're all about making an impact, right? And it's all about knowing your organization, knowing your business. So that was one element to it. And it's also driving the change. It's much easier to drive the change with people that you know. And you can always hire very specific consultants if you need specific knowledge. But we thought, no, this is a core competency. This is the future of how we want to work with data, how we want to business partner, how we want to do all that. And we said, this is so key and critical for us. We want to own this. We want to understand this and not become dependent on a third party. It's always okay to buy advice, as I like to call it. But for us, the strategic decision was to really keep this close to our own heart. And it's also a great journey, because for me, having skills like this is in the end the finance of the future. It's much more than accounting or creating a graph. I think these kind of skills are key for our future finance competencies.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your commentaries. Oliver, what would be your commentary on this presentation?
So obviously with an interest in time, first of all, Alex, great presentation. Congratulations on the award as well. Yeah, user adoption. It's a very common, so from a technological perspective, user adoption is a very commonly overlooked point, I find. And so making sure that the users are going to want to work with the solution is key. Obviously the right data and your points around master data, but that, do I want to look at it? Do I want to work with it? 100%. I think the other thing is, you've been on the full journey, or at least you've been on a large journey there. I think I'd probably point out that, you had to have started somewhere. So although it looks like, oh my goodness, this is a lot, well, actually you would have started somewhere and you would have got, smaller, but it would have started off as a smaller project and grown. So although it looks quite comprehensive, again, it's what's the word? Foundations were in a much smaller topic, I would have thought. But brilliant presentation. Thank you for that, Alex.
Thank you so much, everyone. And once again, Alex, congratulations and thank you for excellent presentation. Now we would like to hear from you on where you are at the moment at this analytical and data-driven journey. So next polling question for you, I'm launching the poll. And please, can you choose one of those options that is the best description for your current FP&A process? How would you describe your current FP&A process? Is it first traditional budgeting and planning when you use last year plus percentage? Is it partially predictive? For example, it's partially driver-based. Is it fully predictive? So you have fully driver-based model. Or is it already digital, where you use predictive analytics, machine learning, automation, and all of this? Please continue to vote. More than 50% of you voted. Just a few seconds, and we are about to share the results. So I'm closing the poll. I'm sharing the results with everyone. Okay, so 54% of you are partially predictive. You're using partially driver-based model. 41% very traditional, 3% fully predictive, and only 1% is digital, predictive, prescriptive, machine learning, automation. I would like to ask you, Alex, to comment on this very quickly, please.
Yeah, no, this doesn't surprise me at all, frankly speaking. because I think we're still in the early stages of all this digital transformation and new technologies and all that. But I must say I'm happy to see that there's still quite a lot partially predictive, driver-based, instead of using the typical save 5%, grow 10% kind of approach that you sometimes see, which is very much top-down driven. So still a long way to go, but we're not in a bad place to start.
Absolutely, but 4% already fully predictive for digital, which is a great start. Thank you so much. Oliver, your very quick commentary, please.
Yeah, I completely agree with Alex's comments, probably echo them as well. The thing that I would interest me is behind this, what's the technology? Because if we're using the heritage Excel, then although we may have a driver-based models, there's other things we need to consider around the trustworthiness of the data on which we're basing decisions. So I suppose the results aren't altogether unexpected, but I feel there's more detail behind those results in order to come to any firm sort of conclusions.
Thank you so much for your commentaries. Thank you so much for everyone who voted. And now this is the time to look at how modern FP&A solution can help to move to digital and data-driven FP&A. Oliver, Head of FP&A Solution Consulting at Unit 4. Oliver, you're welcome.
Thanks so much. So yeah, we've seen some great examples. We've seen some really good ideas today around some of the benefits of some of the applications, I suppose you could say, of achieving that FP&A maturity, let's call it. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time looking at how a modern FP&A solution can help move to that more digital, more data-driven landscape, which I think we're all aiming for. So I want to break this session up into three main areas. First, a brief definition of terms. What does it actually mean to be data-driven in the context of FP&A? Also want a very short recap on the digital maturity model, which I'm sure we all know and love. Some of the legacy issues that I think many organizations are typically still experiencing, trying to move in the right direction. And then finally, probably move on to some of those positive outcomes that can be tied to attaining that goal of becoming more data-driven. So let's, first things first, what does data-driven FP&A actually mean? Well, as we've seen, it's fundamentally about getting the data to work for you, if we try and bottle it into one thing. Whereas in many organizations today, still, we see that over or heavy reliance on our old friend, personal productivity tool, Excel. We spend all of our time sending out Excel spreadsheets, receiving the Excel spreadsheets back, collating them, be it actual data from various sources, be it various forward-looking perspectives, budgets, forecasts, what have you. Great deal of time managing data, very little time releasing and realizing the value of that data in the form of information. I don't want to spend any time today digging into the cost to the organization of this age-old issue. Instead, let's jump onto the next slide and let's try and sort of understand what's the perfect or ideal world of data-driven FP&A, what it means or what it can mean to any organization. So far today, we've shed some light, I think, on the fact that utopian, for maybe want of a better word, that utopian data-driven landscape really includes a breadth of capability. The fundamental message, I think, is connectivity. If we were to try and give it one point, let's jump on to the next slide. Having access to all of the information that you need in order to make decisions, and these decisions about the future of your organization needs to be based on the right data, as Alex was talking about. Make sure that the master data is correct. We need a good understanding of that data. We always refer to FP&A as being financial planning analysis, but don't forget that all of that financial data is typically born from the organization's operations. So really the true definition of FP&A is a very broad, very deep subject, and so therefore being truly data-driven requires data from all the various multiple data sources. We need to be able to access that quickly, easily, in an understandable format. Let's jump to the next slide. Let's talk about those four questions in front of us. So from a technological standpoint, we see the answers to these questions as being much more easily answered with the availability of cloud capabilities. You've got more readily available APIs, so it's much easier to create integration points, process automation, saving time, as Thomas was touching on. What does that do? It increases reliability. saves time on the processes and so on. Access to big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and it's this centralization that results in a single version of the truth. And it's that centralization that's actually underpinned by some of the fundamentals of an FPA solution. FP&A solutions are designed and delivered to support the decision-making process. So it makes pivotal activities, things like scenario planning as an example, a simplistic, a trivial task, rather than what it is today, because these modern solutions have all of those rich features built in. Let's jump to the next slide here and talk a little bit about that type of activity. So, new forecast, want to create a new simulation to accommodate, all of those what if analysis. So whatever eventualities may present themselves, we need to react. So best case, worst case modeling. When variability hits, we now have the capability using these technologies to react with the same speed as the ever-changing environment around us. A click of a button, a new scenario is created, populated, ready for new assumptions so we can test those various outcomes. Are we making the best decisions? Being data-driven, I think, really supports and allows, I suppose, the transformation from that status quo of what do we do every day? We measure performance. And we now want to turn that into a process that allows us to align our operational plans with the strategic objectives. Now, I think it's important we spend a moment looking at this. On the next slide here, so the example is, if everything is centralized, then we can easily set targets. We can allocate those targets based on past predictable performance with ease. This information can be tweaked, it can be changed based on the real world inputs, the user's opinions. Jumping onto the next slide. In this particular example, we're looking at, happens to be a sales target, happens to be allocated across regions in this particular example. The initial allocation has been based on historical performance. And then with our knowledge of activities, of market direction, of company strategy, we can easily flex, we can apply our own opinions on top of that or to that to get those results directly. If we jump onto the next slide, we'll also talk about taking into account different and various restrictions. So in this example, do we have the resources in order to execute our latest ambitions? In this case, it's not just a fact of, yes, I need more headcount. It's a case of, well, actually, the data shows me and supports my business case that I need more headcount. And that in itself would be connected to the relevant area of the organization, such as HR, what have you. Like I said, it's about connectivity. When you couple these things, if we jump onto the next slide at this point, when you couple these things with some of the latest and greatest FP&A enhancements, artificial intelligence, machine learning, you're able then to start asking the solution for its opinion. Based on real life data, you can augment that with your own for a much more reliable, well-founded, well-rounded output. It's fundamentally data-driven consensus planning. It's all about, insights, leveraging all of that rich data, all of the patterns, all of the behaviors that you've already got as an organization that then offers that insight that up until recently, I would argue, has been largely unavailable. Modern FP&A platforms should be, in my opinion, the meeting place for information, for processes, for people. And fundamentally, we need that reliable, relevant, connected data, which would in itself result in better decision making. I would say that this is data-driven FP&A, or arguably at least the tip of the iceberg. Now, a moment ago, I mentioned historical data patterns, historical data behaviors, big part of FP&A. On the next slide, we're going to be talking about the questions, where have we been? How are we performing? This indicates measurement, and answering these questions has to be data-driven. We need to be able to interact with the data, uncover outliers, find hidden variances. The only way to do this, roll up your sleeves, interact with the data. Self-service, rich graphical reporting or representations. It's a big part of the decision-making process. So we need to be able to slice and dice, highlight outliers, find those variances. Let's look at a dashboard of best performing areas, worst performing areas. Where are the bottlenecks? What are we doing well? When you then also take that to the next level, that analytics, when we find an area of interest on the next slide, we might want to dig into the detail. So, why is this happening? You think of how much time is wasted, how many mistakes are introduced, logging on and off various systems in the quest to find underlying hidden issues in the data. And I think with more and more vendors these days offering that fully integrated solution, the user and decision-making process benefits hugely from allowing, systems to communicate, if not be available within one interface, one pane of glass. Find a problem, drill all the way through to the invoice itself, really unlocks a world of potential. So we've only really scratched the topic, the surface of this topic, but I'm hoping these few minutes we thinned the fog slightly on why it's important for FP&A to be data driven. This is the end of my presentation. Let me invite the rest of the group to comment.
Excellent presentation, Oliver. Thank you for sharing your story with us, your experience. I would like to ask everyone to switch on the cameras and very quick commentary. Thomas, are you there?
I'm here, absolutely. Yes, I was a little bit slow in turning my camera on, but I'm here. Yeah, I think this is a beautiful presentation. I think that one of the key takeaways for me is also that you can't manage your planning and reporting all in spreadsheets. I mean, that is just not what a modern FP&A department do nowadays. So when you have these online integrated tools and system, it makes your life so much easier as an FP&A department and so much quicker.
Thank you, Thomas. Alex, what would be your commentary?
Yeah, it's actually also a question to Oliver. I like questions. So you, of course, had great experience with platforms like you've just shown us, right? And we spoke about relevance and making an impact with my team, right? So in your experience, which extent can these kind of platforms be tailored to specific businesses, or is it more like a one-size-fits-all, or what's your experience there?
No, do you know, that's a brilliant question. It's a point that I toyed with bringing up actually after your session, Alex, and indeed yours, Thomas, as well. The flexibility is the key. It's that agile process. It's not a case of we're just trying to respond to what's happening today, but next week, next year, the business changes, the organization changes, strategies change, people change. So having software that supports that flexibility, it's not a fundamental building block of the organization, like a data warehouse, for example. This is something that needs to be flexible to accommodate all of those changes. So yeah, any FP&A solution worth its salt has to accommodate that flexibility to be, content relevant, vertical relevant, data relevant.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for commentaries, Oliver. Thank you for great presentation. And now we are moving on to Q&A session. A lot of questions, but please continue to send your comments and questions. We wouldn't have enough time to answer all the questions, but we will do this in writing through email after the meeting. Just a quick conclusion from my side. So today we were talking about how to move to digital and data-driven FP&A, and the main conclusions are, of course, the use of modern technologies, but also to remember the process and people and culture. It's very, very important. So let us start Q&A session. A lot of interesting questions for you. And the first question is to you, Thomas. Very interesting one. So how did your team skill set during the past 2 years? How much will it change over the next 5 years? So how did you develop your skill set in your team, and how you will develop in the next 5 years, Thomas?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, because you have to take your team on the same journey, right? And it's very much for them, perhaps outside the comfort zone. And what we see, we are having new roles also within the FP&A department, right? Like data scientists and whatnot, and the traditional, let's say, going from an auditing firm into FP&A and having those core accounting skills are becoming less relevant. So we've had to sort of retrain a lot of my staff and also into becoming more of a data-driven and data scientist and understanding how data warehouses and those kind of things work, right? That has been a journey, and that's a journey that's now accelerated. And over the next 5 years, I see that I don't necessarily think that they have to be programmers. I mean, you also need support from IT and whatever, but it's going for these RPAs, whatever you're going to implement, but it's certainly going in that direction, and we need to increase the technical skills of the FP&A teams for sure.
Thank you, Thomas. Alex, the next one is to you. How long did it take from brainstorming to implementation? Actually, quite a few people asking this question, Alex.
Yeah, so once we got the green light to hire the resources, that typically takes a while, right, in corporations, but we got the green light. I think it took a year before we really had our first victories, as I like to call it. Really from starting the recruitment to choosing technology, starting to build all that and the change. So I think it took roughly a year before we had our first bigger user base. And that's a lot of people think it can be faster, and that's a change that you need to manage. You need to manage your expectations, but also try not to boil the ocean. Try to have some early victories, that you get momentum, people get excited, your leadership gets excited, users get excited, and before you know it, they want more from you than you can give them. You get a waiting list sort of. And the moment you reach that point, it takes investment. It's like building a house. It starts with foundation, and by the moment you can see the house, people don't realize a lot of stuff is actually in the ground. And it's the same with building a team like this.
Thank you, Alex. A great journey. The next question is to you, Oliver. What is your view on integrated planning solution and model, including sales pipeline and customer satisfaction, to provide business intelligence to different stakeholders? Is that normally practiced in the digital FP&A systems, in your view?
Well, I should say so. I mean, this calls out to the message of connectivity, making sure the data is as connected as the organization is. So yes, I mean, it makes me want to have a detailed discussion around the difference between BI and FP&A, or FP&A being a subset of BI, but I'll save everybody's ears on that one. But fundamentally, yeah, integration is an important point. Core system like an ERP will having direct integration and capability to pull data and structure from that is incredibly important. I think it's clear that the value that can be received from having that. It's the end of my answer.
Well, thank you so much. I was on mute, Oliver. So thank you so much for your answer. And now the final question to all of you, with your 20 seconds key takeaways for this one. So one question to all of you, and it would be the final one, but please continue, our participants, you can continue to send your questions. We will answer after the meeting. So the question is, how would the panel recommend addressing organizational reluctance to pursue digital transformation due to the obstacle of bad data? So let us start from you, Thomas. Your 20 seconds, please.
20 seconds. That's a tough question to answer with the resistance from bad data. That was the question, right? Yeah, you have to. I mean, you have to work with clean data, but that shouldn't be an obstacle, right? It's a journey, and if you expect everything to be 99.99% perfect from the start, that's you're setting the expectation wrong. But I don't think that data should be an obstacle, and it's part of the journey to get that addressed as well, like Alex talked about with his data master, right, in his presentation.
Thank you, Thomas. Alex?
Yeah, I would say do it together, because the reason that master data is wrong is probably because it was never really visible. So basically, by using modern technology, you can make it very visible, and then together with the business, you can spot what's wrong and you fix it. It's peeling the onion, layer by layer till you get to the core. It's the only way to do it. It's not cool or sexy, but when you don't do it, it won't work, simplistically speaking.
Great advice. Thank you, Alex. And Oliver?
Yeah, but just building on I think these two points, I thoroughly agree with everything that Alex and Thomas have said. The other thing I mentioned before is to pick an area to start. So think of low-hanging fruit, think of return on investment, time to value. Choose somewhere to start. Like Alex said, you don't have to boil the ocean. And I think you'll see a bit of success, free up time, move on to the next thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. And with this, I would like to close our Q&A session, but just a few announcements before we all finish this webinar. Just very quick ones. We are planning the next webinars on the 24th of June, Myths and Misconceptions of Rolling Forecast and FP&A Scenario Planning. You're welcome to register. The link is right here at this presentation. And then another one, the latest trends and developments in financial planning and analysis, the results of our 2021 global survey. And finally, I would like to say thank you so much to our sponsor, Unit 4. Thank you so much for supporting us today. I would like to say thank you so much to our fantastic international panel. So thank you, Thomas, Alex, Oliver. And finally, thank you so much to all of you for being with us, for joining us from so many countries around the globe. We hope that we will restart our travel face-to-face. And I hope to meet you very soon, but please continue to join our digital events. And let us stay connected. When we finish this webinar, there will be some survey. Please share with us your insights, your commentaries, any case studies you have, and anything, also information how we can improve those webinars. And with this, I would like to say thank you so much again to our fantastic panel. Thomas, Alex, Oliver, I will see you very soon. Thank you for being part of this panel. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.